And focusing on Spurs and specifically Thomas Frank, it'll be interesting to know what the headlines in London are saying about him now, because we went from singing his praises at the beginning of the season to now looking at how Spurs have really faltered and looked very lackluster in some big games and big moments. So in terms of bigger pictures, are there any worries there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I really think today was embarrassing. He embarrassed himself to start with, Thomas Frank, with what he tried to put in place, really, which, to be fair, being there was, when you got the team here, you understand the back five, Palhinha and Bentancur, that front three, which would do what they could, I guess, with the ball, with maybe one of the wing backs, depending on where the ball was, so they would attack with 4, defend with 11. He said that the plan was to press really high and to be aggressive and to go. To press high, you need Arsenal to actually have the ball in their own box or to have a goal kick, which was never the case. Spurs touched the ball twice in the Arsenal box in the first half. They had 14 passes in the Arsenal half, not in the last 30, in the Arsenal half, 14 passes in the whole of 48 minutes of the first half. That's one pass. I mean, it's embarrassing. It was an embarrassing performance from him and from the team. And he changed at half-time with Xavi Simons may as well not have been on the pitch, really, for the whole second half. So yes, they scored that goal that Arsenal gifted them in a way, because Zubimendi should never get hold of the ball for so long, should have let the ball go before that. But I thought Thomas Frank got everything wrong today, and it's not the first time. We talked about how bad they were against Chelsea at home and how no threat they offered. He's got no patterns of play going forward. Attacking-wise, there is nothing. And when his team doesn't defend well, which they did at the start of the season, but not so much anymore, then they have nothing going for them. And I know he needs energy from the fans, energy from the players. That's how his Brentford team was so good, right? Because they had all that energy, especially at home. It was a fortress. You don't get that same way in a big club. Players don't respond the same way. Fans don't respond the same way. They've got other expectations. They're very demanding, far more than at Brentford, for example. And right now, he can't get what he wants, and he can't get it right either. And today, you can understand maybe why you would want to go for a back five and be solid and compact. But you go with a back five again and those 2 6s in front of that, and you leave all that space for Moreno and Eze and Trossard and Saka. It was a walk in the park for Arsenal, and it shouldn't have never been. And for me, this is all on Thomas Frank.
Stevie, putting Arsenal's brilliance aside, though, do you think Thomas Frank, as Jules said, did himself no favours just starting with how he lined up his team?
Yeah, I think Jules hit the nail on the head, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, when we talk about patterns of play, you know, the patterns of play, the reason you use them is because when things are not going well, you can revert to them. Things that you train every day and work on every day, you know, ball's going wide. When it goes wide, it comes in. When it comes in, it's a quick flick. All of those things you work on for when things are not going well. You know, we'd all love to get a team and just throw them out on the field, and it's Brazil or the great Dutch teams or the great Real Madrid teams where they can just play, and every coach would love to be able to say, you know what, you go and show us what quality you've got. But not everybody can do that. And so yes, you have to be organised, but you also have to have a structure going forward. And I have to agree with Jules. They, not only in this game, but recently, have looked as though they have no structure going forward whatsoever. We figured that he would get them organised after the last manager, which he did, which is the easy bit. You know, coaching, the easy bit is filling holes, keeping it tight. Where should you be? The toughest part of coaching is the other side of the game. How do you get everybody forward? How do we do it correctly? How do we do it quickly? And then how do we put the ball in the net? And today, he got both wrong, and that's worrying.
As a former player, but also I have to imagine if you're a fan of Spurs and you're watching this game and you're getting run over all over the field, and every time they pan to your manager, this guy is over here with the assistants. They're looking at the tablet, right? and they're discussing, and they're doing the thing and the tablet, and then they're pointing over there, and the tablet over here, and I'm like, throw the tablet away, dude. The answers are not there.
Yeah.
The game is right out there in front of you. The answers are not there. If you're having to look at your tablet 10 times during the first half to try to break it down and figure out what's going on, then you have issues. The answers are not here, the answers are out there on the field, and you have to make those decisions on the run. And what I saw was a guy with a blank stare. And when you're a player and you see your manager who's diving into the tablet and has a blank stare when you look at him, guess what? If he's not sure,
You're not sure.
then you're not sure. At the very least, you got to fake until you make it. At the very least, you have to portray a sense of, I know what I'm doing, this is the game plan, and this is how we're going to execute it. But every time you look to the silence, he's over here on the tablet, you lost me.
There's not a player that ever played the game when the manager's on the touchline, shouting your name, looking at you, pointing the finger, telling you to buck your ideas up. There's not a player that wants that. And there's not a player, almost every single player reacts to that. As Ali said, they certainly don't react to some guy with his head stuck in a tablet, that's for sure.
Well, that was pretty positive, that one.
Well, Thomas Frank wants to go back and look at that game in more detail. These are the sort of bare numbers from the game itself. 3 shots, 0.07 expected goals, 4 touches in the Arsenal box, 120 passes in the opposition half, 52 passes in the final third. They average 54 passes in the final third in one half of football, normally Tottenham. So that's, a sort of 50% reduction. But more significantly, just to put it into context, is of the 12 games they played so far this season, these are the lowest numbers. And perhaps a little more surprisingly, over the last 10 seasons, where they played 392 games, so 380 over the 10 seasons, plus the 12 of this season, they're way down towards 392 in all of them. There is an argument that this is the worst creative performance from Tottenham in over 10 years, Les.
Well, yeah, we saw that today. Apart from Richarlison's shot, I don't remember them having another shot at goal. All the stuff he was talking about, I totally agree with it, but the one word is they didn't compete. Didn't compete against Arsenal today. They turned up in North London derby. Whatever derby you turn up in, you know it's going to be hostile, you know it's going to be fierce. Just didn't look like it today. It looked like tiddlywinks. They just didn't compete the whole game. And if you're a Tottenham fan now, you're as frustrated as anything, because go there. Okay, you're playing against one we've spoken about, arguably one of the best team in this league at this moment in time. So what you want to do is just go and compete. You want to go and have a go. You don't want to go there. They laid down today and got rolled over. Absolutely rolled over.
The reason it feels worse is because, as we've both mentioned, the same things were getting said a few weeks ago after Chelsea. That's a big London derby. Then you come here on the back of that, and then it's exactly the same. When you see the ranking terms, it's the worst this season. In some ways, you'd expect Arsenal the best team in the league. So it's always going to be difficult coming here. But what Les is saying there is obviously a Tottenham man. This happened a few weeks ago as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's probably going to make Thomas Frank's job more difficult in terms of winning over the Tottenham fans if those 2 performances have come against 2 of their fiercest rivals.
Yeah, but we got to remember, and I said this before, this side finished 17th in the league last year. So, same group of players, barring 1 or 2, finished 17th in the league. So it's not going to turn overnight. We had to go at Postecoglou last year saying at least they went on the front foot and tried to have a go. Just couldn't stop things going any other way. But they didn't do anything today. They didn't have a go. They didn't defend well. They didn't attack well. There's no part of the game today that you could look at and say, well, they had to go here or they had to go there.
And you know what Tottenham fans expect more than anyone, and they do want attacking football. They do want beautiful football. But even if that's not being delivered, the players, and Vicario said this a little bit earlier on, is that there are certain non-negotiables in a game. Did they get them today at least?
Football's never changed, no, and that's what he's talking about. The non-negotiables are that you go somewhere and you compete. Okay, you get beat by a better side, but you go somewhere and you compete. They didn't do that today, and that Vicario said that when they played against Chelsea, and you come again against your biggest rivals, and the same thing's being labelled at you, and that's your goalkeeper saying that.
It's a worrying trend in terms of the 2 teams that they would be expected to, if not perform well against, that they would be expected to compete against and look like they were playing with an intensity. And he said intensivity there. I'm just chucking extra syllables in. But they would be expected to play with an intensity against Chelsea, against Arsenal. And if that's lacking, that's what's going to sting.
Yeah, I think there were probably slightly two different problems. I was at the Chelsea game as well, and that was the worry there was actually how they were actually going to try and score a goal, and how they can actually play through. Have they got the central midfield players to get on the ball? Have they got the quality? Have they got the courage? Have they got the idea from the manager how they're going to do that? That was definitely lacking there today. That was lacking as well today. But what you'd always expect from a Thomas Frank team, or certainly 9 times out of 10, especially if you're playing a back 5, if you've got 2 holding midfield players who are not great on the ball but are there to stop the opposition, is not to concede goals like they did today, especially right in front of the edge of the box, where you're supposed to have at least 5 players, 3 centre-backs, 2 central midfield players. The space in that position was alarming, and that comes down to, as Thierry's mentioned, actually maybe the system and the problems with that system as well.
That's because I heard him saying that he played in a 5-4-1. I invite you to look at the first goal, 5-2-3, or maybe Kudus. I know the bird didn't understand that they had to go back to the 2 holding midfielders, because at the very beginning that's exactly where Arsenal were finding the space. Then yes, I agree, and after 25 minutes they went to it looked like Odegaard was retreating a bit more, less a bit Kudus, but the space was found on the outside of the 2 holding midfielders so many times in the first half.
Only one outcome, hat-trick for him, and Arsenal win it 4-1.
Arsenal win it 4-1 indeed, with quite the dominant performance, and North London is red indeed, and Eberechi Eze, like I said, haunting the fact that Tottenham wanted his signature and could not get it in the end. So here's a look at the Premier League standings now, the top half, because Arsenal are 6 points clear at the top of the table ahead of Chelsea. Spurs, they are in 9th though, level on points with a certain Manchester United, who will be playing tomorrow against Everton. All right, well, at this moment, let's bring on in another member of our team. Is Julian Laurens, who actually was at this game. We know he's got some close ties to Arsenal, and because of that, Jules, thoughts on the game? Does this mean the league's over then? Because I don't know who on this planet can stop Arsenal at the rate they're going.
Yeah, it's a good question, Alexis, for sure. And today was another test, simply because it was the derby. Not that I think many of us thought that this current Tottenham team could cause too much problem to Arsenal, but you just never know. It's the rivalries, the derby, etc., etc. But today was not the day where Arsenal would be rattled really, or put under pressure, or have a few doubts. It might be next Sunday away at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, who were 3 points behind just before this game kicked off today. So had Arsenal lost against Spurs, it would have been just 3 points between Chelsea and Arsenal, and they would have faced next week in southwest London. But it's 6 points, and I think if Arsenal don't lose against Chelsea, they would have played all the most direct opponents really, when you think about it. And if they're still that clear, it's true that it's theirs to lose more than anything else, which we've said really pretty much since the start of the season.
It's just interesting because, as Jules pointed out, this was a derby. This was the North London derby. And I mean, Ale, I think we were talking about it just off camera, that urgency from Spurs just never came. Did you notice that, or is it just that Arsenal were that good?
I'm going to focus on Arsenal for right now. And I'm sure we'll speak about Spurs at some point. But their performance is not worthy of actually talking about Spurs. What I would say about Arsenal is that they're checking every box that you can potentially put in your mind about what a championship-winning team looks like. Today, that was supposed to be about the emotion of the derby, that throw the records away. You never know what's going to happen. 5 minutes in, you knew what was going to happen in this match. It wasn't competitive. Arsenal Spurs wasn't competitive. Arsenal were all over Spurs, and from the very beginning, when Eze just kind of clips the ball over the top to Declan Rice, and Vicario has to come over with a save, you're kind of going,
Long night.
It's only a matter of time until this gets out of hand. Arsenal pressing the ball higher up the field, forcing turnovers. Spurs never getting close enough to Arsenal to actually impact their game or to force them to play the ball backwards or sideways. The manner in which Arsenal approached this game, it just seemed inevitable that at some point they were going to score, and 1 was going to become 2 and 2 was going to become 3. And while it seemed inevitable to me watching it from afar, it also felt like it was inevitable for Spurs. They almost sense as if like, I don't know. I don't think we got a chance because we can't complete 3 passes and we are not finding any sort of outlet, or we're not finding any way to release some pressure, and that's credit to Arsenal. Overall, the thing that I think makes it the more impressive for Arsenal is that this was not a competitive game. It was not. There was 5 or 10 minutes following the Richarlison goal that you may think, Arsenal were a little uncomfortable. And that was it. There was nothing, again, competitive in what's supposed to be a derby match. It wasn't. It was all Arsenal all the time.
Stevie, when you see Spurs playing like they did and faltering big time in a derby, when you see the problems that we know Liverpool are having, when you see Manchester City, of course, still winning, having an Erling Haaland doing well, but again, faltering to Newcastle, what team can really take down Arsenal at this point?
Arsenal. Arsenal's the only side that can trip themselves up. You know, yes, they beat a lacklustre Spurs side, but the way they played the game, the composure, particularly in a North London derby, the way they went about it from the start to the finish, this is impressive. And the one thing they've done this weekend, if anybody had any doubts that Sunderland wasn't just a hiccup, then this weekend Arsenal have completely and utterly separated themselves from everybody else in the Premier League. Everybody else. We can talk about any team you like and we will find holes in it. You can't find holes in this Arsenal side. You can't. We could sit here all day and not one of us would come up with a genuine reason why Arsenal will fail. That's how good this team is and how much they've separated themselves from every other side in the Premier League.
Jules, just hearing Stevie talk about that, the fact that we all could sit here and pick apart this Arsenal squad and not really find any holes or almost any flaws in it. What are their ambitions now? Are we talking a treble? Are we talking a quadruple maybe?
Oh, God.
No, I don't think they're even thinking about that. Yeah, I think they'd be happy with the league to start with, just to that. They've been waiting for long enough, it will be 22 years if they do win it at the end of this season since the last one. I think that's all they think about. But we talked a lot about Gabriel being missing for this game and out for at least 4 weeks probably. And who would replace him? Would it be Calafiori or Mosquera or Hincapié, and where? And okay, this is an easy game for Hincapié because Stevie could have played next to Saliba in that defense, and Stevie would have played in his sofa like Hincapié did. So the Bayern game would be a much bigger test for Hincapié, like the Chelsea game away next weekend. But even when they don't have Gyökeres, or they don't have Odegaard, or they don't have Gabriel, even on the back of an international break where everybody went away and just came back, they're still producing something like that. I mean, I know Spurs were embarrassingly bad, and Thomas Frank especially, because this tactics just was completely useless and completely clueless from him. But that's one for later. But Paul Vale, by the way, had a higher expected goals against Arsenal than Spurs had. Leeds had a higher expected goals than Spurs had today. This is how bad it was. But for Arsenal, to just have players coming in like Hincapié, who hardly played today, and feel really at ease in the structure, Eze in that role. I mean, Declan Rice today was again outstanding. It's just, even when they have injuries, which was the thing that let them down in the last 3 seasons, now because of the depth in the squad that they've had, which we highlighted earlier in the season on the show, it's a very different team and a very different dynamic from them.
Well, the only thing that's fancier today than Jules' background was just the performance from Eberechi Eze. Jules, that hat-trick, you just felt like it was eventually going to come. It was written in the stars, considering his story and his ties to Arsenal. But he's just bringing that X factor that some felt Arsenal still needed, especially in attack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, he was in the right place at the right time. His quality on the ball is exceptional. It was helped massively, and so was the team, by, again, how bad Spurs were. How can you leave Eze with so much space on the edge of your own box when you play with a back 5 and 2 defensive midfielders? That's 7 players, plus your goalkeeper. And yet Eze has all that space. Moreno has all that space to pick a pass, to pick a shot, to just do what you want, really, on the pitch. But Eze was outstanding. And you're right, Alexis. It was always written that he would be shining. For all the debate, all the narrative before this game of he almost signed for Spurs, but for him, the Arsenal fan, to have gone to Arsenal, the dream move, and now in his first North London derby, with the rivalry, with the whole family in the stands, and yeah, he's the big star and scored those 3 goals in that central position. I don't know what's happening when Odegaard comes back, and he's not far from coming back. Do you move Eze back out wide on the left again? But Trossard has been great, so there's a lot of question mark that then Arteta would have to respond. But when you've got Eze in that kind of form, even at the last third end of the pitch, it's just a luxury, really.
This is when we need Jan Åge Fjørtoft.
Why is that?
Why?
Well, how do you move a guy who's just scored a hat trick?
You don't.
You don't.
Well, you don't.
Well, you don't.
Full stop.
I'm watching the game, and the camera's panning towards the sidelines, and I'm looking at Odegaard, and I'm thinking, he's sitting there going,
Uh-oh.
oh.
Uh-oh.
You know what the telltale sign was? That Eze scores the second goal. Gabriel goes crazy with Odegaard right next to him.
Yeah.
And Odegaard is like, all right, goal.
Okay.
That's not good for me.
All right. Hey. Good goal there, Eze. All right.
And you can't. But I honestly think we should forget about Spurs today. Because I honestly believe this performance, it wouldn't have mattered that much who they were up against. And that's the position they're in now. It doesn't matter who they play, home or away. It's about what we do. That's what the best teams do. Let the opposition worry about us, because every single thing we do is going to be better than what anybody else has got to offer. And that's the biggest thing for me from this. I mean, to think that you would suggest that the league's over after, 12 games? But it's not a fact. It feels as though it's right. You know, I don't feel strange saying the league's over. The Premier League, we talk about the Bundesliga and Bayern and think, well, what can it, this is... But you know what? When a team's that good, who cares if it's over after 12? If you can't enjoy watching a team that plays the way Arsenal does, then you're watching the wrong sport.
If I can just go back to Eze for a second, and on the hat trick, they all came in the same central position that Jules is talking about. Now, that you may think, well, he's just very good at finding the open spaces, and then once in the open spaces, he was very good about finishing his chances. But it does take some mental discipline to not just roam around and understand, if this team is going to give me this space, then I'm going to hang out right here. I don't have to go over there. I don't have to go over here. No. This is where I got my space. They're apparently not aware that I'm about to score here again and again and again, and he had another chance to score a fourth goal from the same position. Now, we're sort of on the fringes of talking about Spurs, but I'm with you, Stevie. It is about Arsenal. It is about Eze. It is about the individual players of Arsenal, but then the team structure of Arsenal and how good they are. The reason that you can have players come in and out, this guy's injured, that guy's injured, this guy's injured, and they're still able to produce results like this and performances like this, is because there is depth within the squad, which is always important, but there's also knowledge and understanding what your role is within the structure of a group. It is clear to see that Arsenal are right here, and then it's everybody else. If you didn't think that coming into this weekend, maybe Don thought that this was 50-50. Somehow he argued that it was a 50-50 between them and Manchester City, even though Arsenal were up 4 points coming into this weekend. I don't understand his math, but nobody else does either. You watch what this weekend was all about in the Premier League, and you can physically see the separation between Arsenal and everybody else.
You also need to talk about people like Trossard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every championship winning side, regardless of what country it is, has people like Trossard. A guy who doesn't get the headlines. If somebody's going to be left out, is it going to be him? I mean, he's constantly been mentioned in those terms. But this season in particular, he's the guy that's turning up and producing. You know, he's got a goal today. Maybe a bit lucky, but he's got a goal. He's got an assist as well. But he's a guy that we never talk about. So not only have they got superstars that are performing, but even the so-called fringe players, the so-called players that are under question, they're producing as well. I mean, it's a recipe for success.
The future of Ethan Nwanery's potential loan move is suddenly uncertain, as Arsenal remain wary of repeating past setbacks caused by injuries. According to recent reports, the club is open to sending the young midfielder out on loan this winter, but the idea raises immediate questions. Nwanery has become the talk of the moment after a report from the Daily Mail suggested that Arsenal are considering a temporary move for the 18-year-old. Despite his limited minutes this season, the thought of letting him leave, even temporarily, comes with significant doubts. Back in October, Mikel Arteta publicly insisted that Nwanery would have plenty of opportunities to play, pointing to the fact that the teenager had already been called upon when Martin Odegaard was injured. "I don't know, but I don't work with expectations," Arteta said at the time. "I work with what the players can give in the context of where the team is at that moment." Ethan played 2 Premier League matches early on because Martin was out. He's played in other competitions and he'll play more. Yet the reality has been very different. Nwaneri has logged fewer than 500 minutes this season, appearing in just 5 of Arsenal's 11 Premier League games, none of them as a starter. His only starts came in the 2 EFL Cup wins over Port Vale and Brighton, and in the 3-0 Champions League victory against Slavia Prague. The arrival of Ebereki Eze and the promotion of Max Daumann have tightened competition even further. And despite injuries to Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, and Noni Madueke, Nwaneri's pathway has only narrowed. It's easy to forget how young he still is. At 18, and having first debuted at just 15, like Daumann, these are formative years where consistent playing time is crucial. The busy festive period could open that door, but with Odegaard, Madueke, and Kai Havertz all nearing their returns, there's a real chance Nwaneri could slide even further down the pecking order. This is why a January loan sounds logical on paper, but it also sets off alarm bells. Arsenal's season has already been shaped by injuries for the second year in a row, and squad depth has never felt more essential. A single setback among the attacking players over the holiday fixture run could thrust Nwaneri back into an important role almost overnight. The more sensible approach may be to reassess in the summer, once the squad naturally reshapes and the club have a clearer picture of their needs heading into 2025. Only then would a loan feel more secure, ensuring Nwaneri actually gets the minutes he needs rather than risking another stalled development. Even then, nothing is guaranteed. Supporters will remember Serge Gnabry's loan to West Brom, intended to push him closer to first-team football, but ultimately a move that derailed his progress before he rebuilt his career in Germany. Arsenal's recent history with loans has been mixed at best, and too often unsuccessful. For now, the club must weigh the immediate needs of the squad against the long-term growth of one of their brightest prospects. Whether a loan becomes the right option, or another cautionary tale, remains to be seen. But the complexity of Nwaneri's situation extends beyond simply playing time and squad depth. Inside the club, there is an ongoing debate about how quickly young talents should be exposed to the pressures of elite-level football. Some staff members argue that Nwaneri's technical level is already above many players his age and that keeping him close to Arteta's structure will accelerate his development. Others believe that without consistent starts, and without a clear pathway to earn them, his progress could plateau. The uncertainty has also stirred conversation among supporters and pundits. Several former Arsenal players have expressed concern that the club may be repeating old patterns, where promising youngsters become trapped between first-team aspirations and inconsistent minutes. Others, however, believe the club is being careful for the right reasons, protecting a player who still needs physical development before facing the demands of weekly Premier League battles. This internal and external pressure has placed added scrutiny on Arteta's handling of young talents this season. While he has been praised for trusting academy graduates in the past, the balance has become harder to maintain now that Arsenal are competing on multiple fronts and aiming for silverware. Every decision carries weight. Resting senior players risks losing points, while overusing inexperienced teenagers risks injury or decline in confidence. There is also the broader question of what kind of loan would actually benefit Nwaneri, should the club eventually decide to pursue one. A move to a Premier League side fighting relegation could offer minutes, but expose him to a demanding environment that prioritizes survival over development. A Championship loan, on the other hand, might provide consistent matches, but at the cost of adjusting to a more physical style that does not always align with Arsenal's tactical identity. European options have been mentioned as well, though not confirmed. The possibility of joining a club in the Netherlands or Germany, leagues known for nurturing young talent, has been discussed quietly among observers. Yet Arsenal are hesitant, given how unpredictable such moves can be and how often they fail to produce the expected results. Meanwhile, Nwaneri himself remains focused and professional, according to those around the training ground. He is said to be eager for opportunities, but not frustrated or discouraged. The coaching staff admire his attitude, which only complicates the decision further. He is doing everything right, and still his future remains uncertain. As Arsenal approach the January window, the club finds itself at a crossroads. The next few weeks will likely be decisive, not just for Nwaneri's short-term career, but for how Arsenal choose to manage their most gifted prospects in an era of high expectations and relentless schedules. Any decision made now will be examined closely, not only because of what it means for Nwaneri, but because it will signal how the club intends to balance ambition with development as they move into the next phase of Arteta's project. Arsenal now face a difficult setback. Piero Hincapié may have to step into the North London derby under less than ideal circumstances after Gabriel's injury blow. The club is hoping that Hincapie's long late return trip to North London won't affect his readiness to replace Gabriel against Tottenham, because losing the Brazilian for such a crucial match is a major hit to Mikel Arteta's plans. Arsenal have already been forced to cope with key absences at various stages of the season, but Gabriel missing the derby presents a challenge of a very different magnitude. Naturally, the focus shifts to who will fill the gap on the left side of Arsenal's defense, and for many, the most logical answer is Piero Hincapie. The summer signing impressed during his only start for the club so far, an outstanding display at left centre-back in the League Cup win over Brighton. That night, he partnered with Christian Mosquera, who is also an option for Arteta on Sunday. One possible configuration would see William Saliba move to the left, with Mosquera taking his place on the right, depending on how heavily Hincapie's international travel weighs on Arteta's decision. And that travel is far from insignificant. The Ecuadorian defender is currently away with his national team. He captained Ecuador during their 0-0 draw with Canada, helping secure the clean sheet. But the real concern comes with his final international fixture. Ecuador face New Zealand in New Jersey in the early hours of Wednesday morning, UK time. The match kicks off at 1:30 a.m. and is expected to finish around 4 a.m. Only after that will Hincapie board his flight back to England, meaning he won't arrive in London until Wednesday afternoon at the earliest. From there, he will have just a handful of days to recover, settle back in, and prepare for one of the most intense fixtures of the season. The slight silver lining is that the derby falls late in the weekend, giving him as much time as possible to reintegrate. Still, the timing of his return is far from ideal and adds yet another layer of uncertainty to Arsenal's defensive preparations ahead of a match that could define their momentum for weeks to come. Beyond the logistical headache, Arteta and his staff must also consider the physical and tactical demands that a North London derby imposes. It is not the sort of match where a defender can arrive underprepared, particularly against a Tottenham side that has looked sharp in attack this season. Any hesitation, any lapse in intensity caused by travel fatigue, could be costly. Inside Arsenal, there is a quiet concern that the club may once again be walking a tightrope with its defensive depth. Over the past 2 seasons, injuries at the back have forced Arteta into uncomfortable choices, and Gabriel's setback reopens a conversation that the club hoped was behind them. The manager has repeatedly emphasized the importance of continuity across the defensive line, especially given how central the high defensive line and controlled build-up are to Arsenal's identity. Gabriel and Saliba have been at the core of that stability, and disrupting it inevitably changes the team's rhythm. Analysts close to the club have noted that Hincapie's profile fits the role well, confident under pressure, quick across the ground, and capable of progressing the ball with either foot. However, they also caution that he is still adapting to the Premier League's pace and physicality. Throwing him straight into a derby environment may accelerate his integration, but it also carries risk. Supporters have expressed mixed reactions as well. Many are eager to see Hincapie given a real opportunity, believing his style suits Arsenal's long-term plans. Others worry that asking him to deliver immediately, under difficult circumstances, could place unnecessary pressure on a player still in the early stages of adjusting to English football. The timing of Gabriel's injury also complicates Arsenal's broader goals. With a congested winter schedule approaching and the title race tightening, every match takes on heightened importance. Dropping points against Tottenham could shift momentum, not just in the standings but in confidence across the squad. It also forces Arteta to rethink how he manages minutes for defenders who have already logged heavy workloads this season. Club insiders say the staff have been preparing contingency plans for weeks, anticipating scenarios where international duties and injuries overlap. Yet even the best planning can be stretched thin when travel delays and late-night kickoffs are added to the equation. In the coming days, the medical and performance teams will conduct assessments to determine exactly how ready Hincapie is for Sunday's showdown. Arteta is expected to make a late decision, balancing long-term health with short-term necessity. The hope is that the Ecuadorian arrives in good condition, responds well to training, and can at least offer a reliable solution in Gabriel's absence. What remains undeniable is that Arsenal enter the derby under a new layer of pressure, forced to adapt, to trust their depth, and to test the resilience that has been a defining theme of their season so far.